Welcome to Film Detour, a podcast where two longtime film buddies take you down and around the back alleys and side streets of cinema.
With the occasional left-hand turn.
I'm John Knapp.
And I'm Bob Mueller. So let's go. John, you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's hit it.
Today's film is The Set-Up, made in 1949 by RKO Pictures.
Directed by Robert Wise. One of our favorite directors, right, John?
Yeah. He has a very long career that spans a lot of different genres.
Well, that's the amazing thing about Robert Wise is he did so many different types of films. And what's interesting for me is, he was soup to nuts. He started out in the sound department at RKO. He was relatively young, and the way I see it, when you look at his career, he really, really wanted to do this. He wanted to be a director. He wanted to be a filmmaker. He wanted to be part of this picture business.
Well, his brother got him the job at RKO, funny enough.
It's very good. I did not know that.
And yeah, he kind of started from the ground up. Sound editor, as you said, and then he went on to become an editor. And I always find directors that were editors, like David Lean, they make great directors because they kind of know how pictures are put together. You're learning storytelling, how to pace things, and all these elements that go into editing.
How to put it together visually. What do you need? What kind of a shot do you need? Do you need a close-up? What do you need for these things to tell that story? And he worked on a movie, John. It was pretty well known in the 40s. Somebody named Wells or something directed it.
Yeah, some big guy. Young guy actually. He was young.
Yeah, he smoked a lot of cigars.
Yeah,
Citizen Kane, right? You're working on what is arguably the greatest American motion picture ever made, and you got this team. You got Orson Welles. You got Mankiewicz writing the script with him. Mankiewicz was a big deal in Hollywood at the time.
Yep.
And you got Robert Wise was the editor, and he's just up and coming. That's the amazing thing. He's just up and coming. He did a couple of movies, editing-wise, before he did Citizen Kane. You got Greg Tolan as a cinematographer, and you got Bernard Herrmann. So many people came out of that movie, and I think they really learned from making that movie with them. And you watch Wise's career as he goes through his career, and you go, wow. This guy really, really understands it from the ground up.
Yeah, and some of the other films he edited, Hunchback of Notre Dame, 1939, and then another great film, The Devil and Daniel Webster.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
Walter Houston. Is Walter Houston great in that or what? He is so much fun.
The costumes in that film are great because it's colonial America.
It's fantastic. I love that movie. It's a great movie, yeah.
And, of course, Citizen Kane, as we said, in 1941. He was nominated for an Oscar for Citizen Kane as an editor. And then Magnificent Ambersons, another Orson Welles film.
But that's an interesting thing, the whole thing with Magnificent Ambersons. Welles finishes shooting the movie, and I don't know if it was his relationship with Wise from Kane, or was he just a stock editor at RKO Studios. Right. But they obviously had some sort of relationship. So Welles finishes shooting the movie, and he goes off to some other place to quote-unquote scout locations for his next movie. And the studio looks at it, and they go, we can't release this thing. What the hell is this? So Wise is left to... Yeah. So Wise is left to pick up the pieces and even shoots. He's actually... He became a director at this point, in part because he reshot some of the stuff.
Well, they wanted Orson Welles to cut the film down, and I think there were a lot of cables going back and forth between Orson Welles and Wise, and I think Wise was in a bad spot because he had to do the bidding of RKO.
Absolutely, but what I heard that they, after that came out, Welles was so angry at Wise. He didn't talk to him for over 40 years.
Yeah. So Robert Wise is a director. He had a lot of films that we can't list, but we're going to talk about some of our favorites or the standouts for us. And as we said earlier, these films, as you'll see, they kind of run the gamut of genres. which made him an amazing director because he was able to do all these different styles.
Well, that's the thing, John. You know, he reminds me of a Howard Hawks or a William Wyler. Now, you look at the things where William Wyler can go from doing something like The Letter, sort of a noirish film, and then freaking Ben-Hur.
Yeah.
So he could do anything, and Hawks could do, Red River, and then he could do a screwball comedy with Cary Grant. So I mean, these guys, it reminds me of Cagney saying that, this was a job. If they said you had to dance, you dance. If they said you had to be funny, you had to be funny.
It was a factory. They had to make so many films a year, slot these guys in, and you had to be quick on your feet. You had to be able to do all these things, which is great.
And you look at directors today, even directors that we love, from the 70s, say, and you go, these guys really couldn't do that sort of thing. I love Scorsese, but he can't quite jump those genres in that way. You know what I'm saying?
I would say the one that comes closest, and I know he's a big admirer of Wise, is Steven Spielberg. You can tell just by the style of his films, he's a big fan of Wise, and, he's done a lot of different genres.
So let's just run them down, John, real quick, in order what some of the movies are.
Well, I'm going to start with The Body Snatcher from 1945.
Fantastic. Produced
by Val Lewton, a great producer and director of horror, or I guess it's horror films, correct?
Absolutely. Well, cerebral horror films,
yeah.
And, sort of like that. Yeah, no, not so much, blood and guts type thing.
Right. And The Body Snatcher had some kind of known guys in it, some actors we kind of know.
Yeah, somebody named Boris Karloff and Lugosi or something.
Yeah, Bella.
Yeah, it's a great cast, and it honestly is one of my all-time favorite Karloff performances. He is so menacing with just a smile. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And again, so here we are, Robert Wise starting out, and it's got this gothic kind of horror film.
Exactly.
The next one on my list is from 1951, The Day the Earth Stood Still.
The classic of classic science fiction films.
Yeah.
And once again, more of a cerebral thing. It's not about ray guns, really.
Right.
It's not about big, scary, large-brained aliens.
Yeah, aliens visit the Earth because they feel we're kind of getting too much into war. We're kind of violent.
Yes, we're too big for our britches, and we're really, the aliens are not going to put up with it much longer.
I think we need an alien visitor now. I think
we do. I will hope that Michael Rennie is still around today. He can just kind of show up. We'll put a little spaceship and Gort, the robot, in the background. We might have something there.
Klaatu.
Yes. Did I say Gort?
Gort's the robot. You're right. Right.
Yes.
Gort's the robot.
He's Klaatu. All right. Yeah. So I did have it right in the first place. I'm sorry.
And I'll just say, score by Bernard Herrmann.
Yeah, that guy. That slouch.
So here you go. Horror to sci-fi. My next film is Somebody Up There Likes Me.
Paul Newman. I love that movie. The Rocky Graciano story.
And a lot of people in that movie. Sal Mineo.
Yeah.
One of our favorite character actors, Howard J. Stone.
Yeah.
And a cameo by Steve McQueen.
Well, you can't beat that. And I love Paul Newman in this. I love him. He's just terrific. And it looks great.
I have my own personal genre of New York films. That's one of them.
It's a very New York film. Yeah, absolutely.
The next film, Run Silent, Run Deep, 1958.
One of the best submarine movies you're ever going to want to see. And it honestly, and this is high praise, but it's right up there with me for Das Boot.
Yeah. Burt Lancaster, Clark Gable. We talked about this in a previous episode because of Don Rickles. Who is a dramatic actor, not a Wise in this one so much, but he is a dramatic actor, and he's actually very good. Yeah.
Which had to be intimidating because, you're talking about Clark Gable and Burt Lancaster, right?
Yep. And so here we go, jumping genres, right? A war film in a submarine, which is his own genre within war films, submarine
Absolutely,
films.
There's not that many submarine movies. That's right, exactly. Yeah. And you get that claustrophobia, John? That was the claustrophobia that I felt in Das Boot. I felt exactly the same thing when I watched this not too long ago, of feeling like you're really in that tiny little tube.
Yeah.
Keep going, John. Keep going.
Okay, and then 3 years later, West Side Story, 1961.
And just think about the jump there, what he was able to do. Now I know that Jerome Robbins was the choreographer for that.
Yeah. He co-directed with Robert Wise.
Robbins did the dancing and made sure that was where it had to be, which is exactly what he should do. But Wise put together the visuals on this. And I got to tell you, you watch the opening sequence.
Yeah.
You got Leonard Bernstein music, which is just so dramatic. But the way that Wise sets these shots up and the camera movement, John, the camera movement is so beautiful. It's so fluid.
Yeah. The beginning of that film is one of the first helicopter photographed openings I've ever seen, because it's these direct overhead shots of Manhattan that are just gorgeous. And then they kind of segue into these playground scenes of the guys dancing around. Those are actual locations.
Da-da, da. I mean, it's so memorable. You can't get that out of your head.
But what I love about the film, because I did see it again recently, it's widescreen, it's color. The sets of, again, here we are, the sets of New York City streets, they're gorgeous. I mean, there's some weird combination between a movie set and a theater set, because the lighting is a little dramatic, but it does look real. You feel like you're there.
And you know what's interesting? I watched it recently, and all starts out, and I get the chills up my spine. The hair on the back of my neck rises because the music's perfect and the visuals are perfect and all this action, all this movement. And as I'm watching this, I'm thinking, Spielberg comes to mind. And the reason Spielberg comes to mind is Spielberg is the kind of director who, he storyboards everything, but he's the kind of director who knows exactly where to put the camera, how to move it, how to connect it, this shot to that shot. And I'm telling you, I don't think that Steven Spielberg could top what Robert Wise did in the 1960s.
Well, we'll see, because Spielberg is doing a remake of West Side Story. I'll just make a note. This is the first time Robert Wise won Burt Best Director. I think he shared it with Jerome Robbins.
Yeah. He certainly deserves it, because my God, that's a terrific movie. Not just it's a classic American play, musical, but he lifts it up to a different level, the way he is so visual with it. And once again, we talked about this before, coming from being an editor, this thing is so well edited.
Yeah. Okay, the next film, The Haunting from 1963. One of our favorite ghost story.
It's one of the greatest ghost stories of all time. The two things that really strike me are the opening montage where they're explaining about the history of the house. And they show a variety of things, and the one person, climbs to that top of that spiral staircase, and they hang themselves.
Yeah.
This is all really chilling, dramatic stuff. It's just a voiceover, and it's just images. And once again, Robert Wise, as an editor, really understood how to create mood in just a few shots, relatively speaking. And then there's the other scene that kills me, and that's the scene where they're all in this study, and the door starts to breathe. Now, I don't even know how they did that special effect, but I got to tell you, you can give me all the CGI today you want, is never going to look that good. That door is breathing, and it scares the shit out of you. And it's so well directed, and there's so much tension. And that to me, is what a great director is all about.
It's from a novel by Shirley Jackson, very atmospheric. So he goes from West Side Story, and he goes to The Haunting, and he's making a black and white widescreen film. Cinematographer was Davis Bolton. It's such a gorgeous black and white film, first of all. And the use of lighting, because half the film is dark. And the scene I love about in that movie is when the two women are terrified and they're sleeping in their beds.
In the bed, yeah.
And there's all this crazy noise going off. And our star, Julie Harris, thinks she's holding the other woman's hand. And it turns out she's not. She was holding something's hand, but not her.
Something's hand, exactly. John, it's funny, just talking about it, I got the chills going up my spine. I don't care how many times I see that movie. That movie just sings, man.
It
scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, and by the way, also starring Russ Tamblyn from West Side Story.
He's great, man. Russ Tamblin's great in that.
And then the next film on the list, The Sound of Music, which 1965, and this is where he won his second Best Director Oscar.
But it's a beautiful movie. I mean, you got all those great Rodgers and Hammerstein songs, but the way he moves the camera, the way the tone is totally different. You see, just the way you look at the Haunting is such a totally different movie. You look at The Day the Earth Stood Still, totally different movie. And here's a guy just goes in, boom, and does 2 musicals. And they're spectacular musicals.
Yeah. And then the next movie is 1966, The Sand Pebbles.
Oh, my God. That's one of my favorite movies. Oh, my God. Steve Areno.
Starring Steve McQueen, Richard Attenborough, Candice Bergman, Richard Crenna.
Yeah.
Simon Oakland, and, of course, Mako.
Yes. Once again, it's another long movie. He started to get into this kind of David Lean thing. He was making these, kind of epic length movies.
Yeah, and he had trouble making this film because of the length.
By time standards, is a long movie. But once you're in, that thing moves and moves and moves. It's one of my favorite Steve McQueen movies. He's fantastic. But the scene that I remember that so vividly is the fight scene between Mako and Simon Oakland. I love that scene. It's so great. You have all this stuff pent up. Mako he's this little timid guy, and you have Simon Oakland, who's this big bear who's swigging beer for most of the fight. And Steve McQueen is kind of his coach. And finally, because he's just mincing around, Mako just trying to stay on his feet. Steve McQueen just yells out, "Hit him! Hit him!"
The thing about movies like that is, especially today, you have to remind people, some movies are big films, and you have to go on the journey. You know what I mean? Not everything is 30 seconds. Not everything is a 30-minute show,
right.
a 1-hour series every week. Some films are big movies. You just have to go with them. You have to it's like a novel. You have to sit down, focus, and just watch the movie. Let the story play out. There's just so much artistry in The Sand Pebbles about pacing and storytelling.
And several stories going on at once.
Definitely.
Yeah. But it's a heartbreaking movie. It does not have a happy ending at all. Every time I watch that movie, I go, please let it end differently. I don't want it to end this way. Please.
Next on my list is The Andromeda Strain from 1971. So a lot of these films are actually produced and directed by Robert Wise also. He produced this also based on a sci-fi book by Michael Crichton, who was a very big science fiction writer.
It's his first book, I believe.
Yeah. It's a very, very different film than anything you've seen that Robert Wise has done before. It's like this very sci-fi, but very kind of technical almost.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's actually ahead of its time in a way. And like this organism is brought to Earth by accident, and these people are dying, and they're trying to figure out what it is. I mean, think about all the disease movies that have come out since then and now.
Well, think about where we're at today. I just watched it. Honestly, John, I hadn't seen it so many years. I watched it the other night.
Yeah.
I was really just struck by how, current a theme it is, certainly of where we're at right now. But it's so much ahead of its time. The sequence when they come into the town where all these people are dead,
right.
This one small town where all these people are dead, is so beautifully edited. And you have to think in terms of how is this going to be pieced together. And once again, the editor, Robert Wise, understood that. And there are split screens. It reminded me of kind of the way that Scorsese suggested that Woodstock be done, where you have these two simultaneous things happening
right.
in two different locations. But it's all going on simultaneously without cutting here, cutting there. He's giving you everything up on the screen moment by moment. And
right.
it's very intense.
And also reminds me of Thomas Crown Affair, another great use of split screen. And then my next film, it's a bit of a leap to 1979, the very first Star Trek motion picture. And here you go. He's going from a really interesting cerebral sci-fi movie with the Andromeda Strain to a very popular story, the Star Trek.
The Set-Up, 1949. Screenplay by Art Cohen. And it's what I love about this, it's based on the poem by Joseph Moncure March. Based on a poem.
Yeah. Cinematographer, which is amazing in this, Milton Krasner. A long career, some amazing things he's done, I think. He did a couple of great films for Fritz Lang, Woman in the Window and Scarlet Street.
He started early, John. When you look at his career, he did a lot of comedies. He did, like You Can't Cheat an Honest Man and The Bank Dick. He did Buck Privates and Pardon My Sarong. So here's a guy, once again, who could do anything that you threw at him. Now, you were just about to say some of the really high points he was doing, but he could do really anything. I know, pardon my sarong, John. I know that I'll always get...
All you got to do is say that and I'll laugh.
I knew that would get you. All right, go. Go for the high points.
Well, he was a studio cinematographer, so obviously the same thing. They're throwing a lot of different things at him, but two films I'll just mention. One of them's one of our favorites, is Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
There you go.
With James Franciscus.
It's Doomsday.
Which is the excellent sequel to Planet of the Apes.
I love that movie. I don't care if it's hokey. I don't care if the movie's hokey or not. You know, glory to the bomb and the highest. I don't care about that. I love that movie.
And again, a varied career. St. Valentine's Day Massacre for Roger Corman.
There you go. You got St. Valentine's Day Massacre, John, but also King of Kings.
King of Kings.
It's unbelievable. He could do anything.
Yeah. And again, if you look at the styles of all those films, they're completely different. They look different. Some are on a set. Some are like big epic films, intense dramas, Love with a Proper Stranger.
Well, you beat me to it. That's exactly what it's going to say. You go from King of Kings to Love with a Proper Stranger, which is a wonderfully shot New York City movie for me. I always think of that. You know, with Steve McQueen and Natalie Wood, terrific movie. You also have one of my favorite holiday movies. I've been pitching this for years. With Robert Mitchum and Janet Leigh, is Holiday Affair. It's a small comedy. It's on a relatively low budget, and it's beautiful. So the guy could do anything, man. He really could do anything. So Art Cohen is a screenwriter, and as I said, it was based on a poem by Joseph Moncure March. And this is a tight little movie. This is 71 minutes, and Art Cohen, who does not have a big career, he did okay for himself, but I can't think of any other movies that I came across that I could say, oh, that movie. But in this movie, based on this poem, he has some of the snappiest Hollywood dialogue you are ever going to hear. It's beautiful.
I think he started his career as a sports writer, which makes sense for this movie. And you really, just by the script itself, you get a sense of what it's like in this very kind of small world of, journeyman boxers. The film stars Robert Ryan.
What a face.
Yeah.
Classic, tough guy, Hollywood face. And it made so many great movies.
Yeah. He was a heavyweight boxer at Dartmouth. And then he joined the Marines. He was a Marine Corps drill instructor.
I can see that.
Now, that's a tough guy. He's a boxer. He's a drill instructor. You do not want to mess with Robert Ryan.
I see Robert Ryan come on screen. I don't want to mess with him anyway.
Yeah.
So, and you see him in something like Bad Day at Black Rock. He's the meanest son of a bitch you're ever going to want to see.
And Crossfire, which is a great noir film.
Great noir. Yep, absolutely. He's in The Naked Spur. He's in The Wild Bunch.
It's funny, he plays the villain, kind of, Deke Thornton in The Wild Bunch, but he's kind of a sympathetic villain. Like he's chasing two pals.
Right. He's also in kind of an uncharacteristic role for him because he's a commander and he gets duped in The Dirty Dozen. He's supposed to be running the show, but he gets duped by all these malcontents.
Another great Western he's in, which is kind of, I always think of it as a precursor to the Wild Bunch, is The Professionals.
Professionals, oh my God, that is such a great movie. Such a great movie. You got him, you got Burt Lancaster, you got
Lee Marvin.
And you got Claudia Cardinelli. God bless her. And then the female lead is Audrey Totter. Now, she comes to mind when I think in terms of noirs. She's in The Postman Always Rings Twice. She's in The Lady in the Lake. She oozes noir. In this, she's not a femme fatale. She's a very nice lady who's very sympathetic character, who just wants her husband back and doesn't want him to get his brains beat out.
Yeah, and she went on to a long, I would say, television career. She was in a couple of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. One thing I want to know, because I've never seen this show, but just by the name of it, it must have been fascinating. She was in the Joseph Cotton show. Joseph Cotton had a show. Who knows what it was? I don't know.
Was it dramatic stuff?
I have no idea. I don't know if it was a variety show or a dramatic show, but it sounds fascinating.
And then you got another character actor that you've seen a million times, George Tobias.
Oh, yeah.
He comes to mind mostly as Abner Kravitz, the nosy next-door neighbor across the street from Samantha Stevens, the Stevens family, in Bewitched.
Yeah.
I always remember him that. But he made a lot of movies. He was in the Roaring Twenties. He was in Sergeant York. Just a terrific all-around character actor. I love the way this movie opens. You know, there's a guy standing there at the edge of the ring, and he's got a stopwatch in one hand, and he's got a hammer in the other hand, and he's going to start the fight. He's going to hit the bell with the hammer. And you feel the tension because he's just about to do it, and he's looking at the watch, just about to do it, looking at the watch, and finally he hits the bell. And what I love about it, and I think this also sets up the fact that this is not a big prize-fighting arena, is the bell itself is a drum break on a piece of rope.
And that leads to the title sequence, which is very interesting, where you just see the camera just is showing you the legs of the fighters in the ring. And as they dance around, we see the credits. I will note that the timekeeper who hits the bell is Arthur Felig, also known as Ouija. I don't know how he got into the film. I've seen pictures of him, and when you look for him in the film, you'll see it is him. You see him several times.
John, I tip my hat to you on that one. That I did not know, but I love the tension in him when he's ready to ring the bell. And as I said, it's not a bell, John. It's a brake drum on a piece of rope.
So, just a little overall, the setup. It's about small time boxers. And it's in this small town. It's clearly these boxers who kind of travel on the circuit. And they go from town to town, and they're just making a buck here, a buck there. So this whole setup of this movie, it's just so colorful, the idea of this town where all these people are congregating for this fight.
Well, it's interesting you use the word colorful because it's black and white, and it's beautiful black and white, but I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Robert Wise does a beautiful job of setting this movie up. The opening shot after they have the boxing match, and I love how the boxer falls, boom, onto the canvas, right there in frame, right in the center frame, and it's directed by Robert Wise. It's terrific. Certainly, Martin Scorsese studied this movie when making Raging Bull.
Yeah.
And my feeling on boxing movies is they should all be black and white. There's just something about them that just scream black and white. And Scorsese said when he was making Raging Bull, he felt the need to make it in black and white, not so much as an artistic statement, but mostly for the reason that he remembers the Friday night fights.
Right. I think what's interesting about the movie is he starts off basically after the title sequence with this clock.
What's the time?
And it's 9:05. It's 9:05 p.m.
Exactly.
And kind of like High Noon, he's trying to tell the movie in real time.
Absolutely.
And I didn't go and check frame by frame, but certainly it has the appearance that it is real time.
What I love about it, you talk about the opening shot, and it's obviously a backlot set, but it's a wonderful backlot set with the clock in the foreground, and it's setting you up what time it is, etc. And you have all this action going on. Of people, coming into the foreground, people in the background, and the camera moves in, and it's moving in toward the Paradise City Athletic Club, and that's the hall where they're gonna do the boxing.
Right.
And is this town really Paradise City, John?
I think it's a wonderful set. Like you have, as you said, the hall where it says Paradise City, but it's really this whole street. Front with the hall and several buildings, and then across the street you have the Cozy Hotel. But it's an amazing looking set. I mean, there's so much detail in the set.
Everything has this euphemistic name to it. It's a beat up place. It's a hard scrabble place. there are mean street elements to it. And, it's the cozy hotel. It's the Paradise Hall where they're doing the boxing. And it's right over to the right is the Dreamland dance hall.
Yeah. Again, the detail of the set is so amazing, down to the coffee cups and the dishes and the plates with the hamburger stand.
Absolutely.
If you just look at it's amazing what they got into this set.
So you start out, you get a sense of what this place is like. There's just a lot of activity. And for me, what sets up what the people in here, how it's dog eat dog, is you got this old pug boxer, and he's trying to sell some programs of the boxing match and stuff. And then you have this kid, the newsboy. He comes in, walks right in front of the guy, this poor guy, and just starts trying to sell papers right in front of him. And the guy goes, "Come on, buddy, I got to make a living here." And the guy goes, "Take a walk." So you get a sense of who these people are and how this city is. It's far from Dreamland, cozy, or paradise.
But what's funny about that scene is that old boxer could just, in one punch, take that kid out. But he's like a gentle soul, and he just gets pushed off.
That guy, poor guy, is so punch drunk,
Right.
He can't hurt anybody at this point.
Yeah, the term that came to my mind when I'm watching this film is beautiful losers. Everyone is kind of a loser in some way.
Well, you know what, John? It's interesting you say that, because George Tobias, who plays the manager, Tiny, and his trainer / cut man is played by Percy Helton, who's been in a million movies, a million TV shows. And they go into this bar, and you see all the people in the bar, and they all look authentic, John. The broads look like broads, and the fellows look like fellas. They just look like real people.
And it's a great setup because you got, as you said, there's all these colorful extras. There's the guy playing with the crane prize game.
The whole loser thing sets it up for me right there, because the guy's got those crane things where you put your quarter in, you put your nickel in, probably back in the day, and you had that claw come down, and he's got his hands, or the claw, on this camera. He's going to win a prize. He's really excited. And then all of a sudden, boom, it falls out of his hands. And Red looks at it, and he just shakes his head like, geez, that's really something. That's really a sad state of being. Because the deck is stacked. The game is rigged. These guys are never going to get out of this hole that they're in right now.
I think one thing Scorsese took from this movie is the faces of the extras.
Yeah.
And so in this bar, you're kind of going through all these different types of people. You have the guy with the crane. You got these drunks, old drunks, a young kissing couple. There's older people, like old people in this dive bar all drinking. They're all in there just having like a good time. It's like a good time bar.
They're not sitting there in sweatsuits. They're all dressed up.
Well,
the women have their dresses on, and they have a hat on. And I love that about this period, because no matter what kind of money you had, you got some sort of a jacket and tie.
Right.
And you got a hat, usually, right? For the guys and the women, too. They were all dolled up for the evening out.
So here in this bar, we see basically what is, quote unquote, the setup. Tiny is making a deal with this guy, Danny, for his boxer, Stoker Thompson.
Talk about a real face, John, right? This guy with the bags under his eyes and the cheesy pencil mustache, this guy looks like a real person. Not a Hollywood star, but a real person.
The actor's name is Edwin Max.
Yeah.
And anyway, so he's setting up his boxer, Stoker Thompson, to take a dive in this fight that's coming up.
There's a little caveat, though, John, isn't there?
What's that, Bob?
Well, it's called, they didn't tell the boxer that he's taking the dive.
So he's supposed to take the dive in the third round. And what's funny to me is Tiny, his manager, doesn't want to tell him because basically he wants to keep the money. All of $50.
Yeah, that's it. And even Shorts Red a percentage.
Exactly.
He tells him it's 30. He hands him a fin.
Right.
And and Red goes, "I thought you were gonna get 50." Yes, yeah, you know how this guy is. So you got Tiny skimming off the top from everybody.
Yeah. And Red, of course, wants to tell the boxer. He's no dummy. He's like, you got to tell him. And Tiny's like, nah, he's going to lose anyway. Tiny, his manager, has no faith in this boxer.
Yeah, in fact, he says at one point, Tiny goes, it's 100-1 that he could possibly win. And what I love is Red's, and this is where the dialogue from the writer is just beautiful. Yeah, but there's always that one.
Exactly. That's going to come back and haunt you.
Exactly. Yeah, but they're talking about a setup. They're setting that up right there.
So outside this arena, amongst all the colorful characters that we set up, are all these great little tableaus of people. There's a blind man and his pal getting tickets.
He's like a seeing eye dog, his buddy, right?
He's like telling him what the fight is. Here are the tickets. There are these two couples who are waiting outside. They're waiting for one of the wives to show up. And of course, she shows up, Harriet, and she's like, I hate the fights. Last time I went to a fight, I put my hands over my eyes the whole time.
Right. Yeah, she's really very timid.
And then there's the gambler who's talking to Tiny, the manager, and he's like, Stoker Thompson, he's still fighting? I remember him when I was a kid. So we're setting up this guy, Stoker Thompson, is this guy that's been around forever.
At age 35, he's a has-been. But what I love is you got his manager, George Tobias, coming out of the hall, and there's a close-up of the fighters on a poster, and there's a match that George Tobias lights his cigar on, and he literally scratches it across his fighter's name. So if that's not making a statement, I don't know what is.
A little foreshadowing there.
Yeah, that's very Shakespearean.
So we eventually get to the Hotel Cozy. Not the Cozy Hotel, the Hotel Cozy.
Not to be confused with the Cozy Hotel.
And you can see this is just like an old beat-up hotel. Back then, people traveled, by train, by car, and they stayed in all these little dive places. That's kind of died out now because of the interstates, but back then, there were all these little places you stayed in. Because, you traveled from town to town, and this is just this little hotel up on the second floor.
But it's a setup, John. It's a setup of what this guy's life is like. And it's reached a point where, the night of the fight, it's reached a point where the wife has just had enough. She is just tired of seeing her husband's brains beaten in. In fact, the tagline for the poster is, I want a man, not a human punching bag. And that's largely what he's become.
Yeah.
And the thing is, what I don't understand is this. I know if I have a flight to make and I got to get prepped and ready to go, I'm anxious. I'm up, I'm running, I got things packed and everything else. Robert Ryan is lying there on the bed, just, taking a snooze, just trying to get ready for the fight. He's got his dress shirt on. He's got his dress pants on. He's got his socks and his shoes, and he's lying there. This is what the guy does.
Hold on a minute there, Bob. You may be anxious.
All right.
But you may be anxious, but before big events like that, I personally like to take a nap. Because you get freshened by the nap. And I think that's what he's doing. But unfortunately, he's having a nightmare.
I'm with you on that, John. I'm with you on that. I'll go with you. Two different personalities. But I got to ask you this question. When you're taking that nap, do you disrobe or do you lie there in your dress shirt, your dress slacks, your socks, and your dress shoes?
This is a man who's prepared. And I feel bad for him because you can tell he's older for a boxer right away. But here he is trying to take a nap and he's having this nightmare, which is interesting. He's like, squirming in bed there.
So he has this little bit of a tussle with his wife because she doesn't want to go to the fight. And interesting enough, the tickets are pretty cheap, John. They're $1.65.
And he's so happy that he got them for free. But that must have been a bargain for this poor guy.
He's thrilled. He just wants the wife there. She is his whole world. And he wants her there to build him confidence and to see him win, because he's gonna win this one, which is what the pugs always say. It's gonna be the next one. I'm gonna win this one.
Right.
He basically just says, all right, well, here's your ticket. You don't want to come. I really want you to come. He puts his tie on and just walks across the street. I don't know. It's not like you normally see the guy going across with the sweats and he's doing a little jogging or something. He just walks across, dressed like he's going out for the evening.
Well, as you said, it's the 40s. He's putting on his cheap suit. Everyone had a suit or a hat, etc.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting in that scene is they're setting up this. You already know what their life is like. They go from town to town, and this poor woman following her husband from town to town so he can make a few bucks, and he's always betting on the next fight to make some money. It must be depressing. You know what I mean? And she's had it. She's like, you're fighting this young fighter. We know he's a 23-year-old fighter he's going to fight. And she's
Tiger Nelson.
Tiger Nelson. She doesn't want to see him. As she says, don't you see, Bill? You're always just one punch away.
Isn't that the mentality, though, John? They're just the mentality. One punch away from winning, also one punch away from getting your brains knocked in, and you have no more cognitive ability,
Exactly.
You're going to end up across the street, trying to sell programs, and the newsboy's going to take you over.
And I'll just say this. The reason she doesn't want to go, obviously, she doesn't really want to see her husband get beat up. I mean, that's the reason. But she says, I got a headache. And I thought, pulling that old chestnut out, huh?
That old chestnut, yeah. It's a standby.
Yeah. But she really doesn't want to see him get beat up is the thing. She's had enough. So I'll just say in that scene, when we first see Stoker, on the side of the bed is the alarm clock, and it says 9:11.
Right.
And then when he actually leaves for the fight, after this scene, it's 9:17. So we actually are tracking this film in real time. And throughout the movie, you'll see these timepieces in various places kind of giving us the roadmap.
But it's a very effective device. It makes me anxious. You're not sure what's going to happen to this boxer. I'm kind of putting myself in the boxer's situation where you got to make some money on this deal, and your career's slipping away, and you don't even know if you have it anymore. And by seeing this clock go by, you're feeling that same urgency as the clock passes time.
So then he heads over, as you say, in his suit to the Paradise Arena. He's walking in with his satchel. He's going to go to the dressing room, but he passes the entrance to the arena and he can't help himself. He kind of looks in.
Because he hears the crowd, roar all of a sudden. And that's where he's got to turn in and see what's going. It's beautiful tracking shot, isn't it, John?
Yeah. And what's great is, again, Robert Wise is showing us all the faces of these characters we've kind of seen and some new ones in the audience. And they're all into this fight.
Like you said, Scorsese took those things for the audience members, for sure, for Raging Bull. But it also reminds me of Fellini, John. You know, what Fellini knew how to take a face and really, really work it to the max.
Yeah, he actually cast faces. I did read, Scorsese did say he intentionally did not copy shots from this film. Literally copy shots, because he knew it's a great film. It was one of his favorite boxing films, but he didn't want to copy them for Raging Bull. But certainly what he took is the color. The wardrobe of these people is amazing. Yeah. All the varied wardrobes of the 40s. If you look at Raging Bull, it's like a photograph from the 40s.
Right. And it gets, you absolutely feel you've been taken back to that place. And I'm not saying he copies it. I'm just saying he certainly studied it.
Oh, yeah.
Because there are so many elements of the faces that are in that crowd. And we come back to them time and again.
So Stoker walks into the ring and he's watching this fight. And then we get to see some of these faces. You got the soldiers. They're all sitting in a row, screaming at the fighters.
You got the soldiers, the sailors. Yeah, absolutely.
You got one guy yelling, kill him, kill him.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing, John. That's the thing that gave me the chills. Because they do this tracking shot, and you go down this entranceway, and it's dark walls on either side. And as you get in there, you're watching Stoker Thompson go in, and he's looking around, and in the foreground to the right-hand side of the frame, there's a guy out of focus, and he looks like any average, city guy that you were ever going to see, and he just says, "Kill him!" kill him. And Stoker looks at him and goes, "Oh my God, Jesus Christ! This is what I'm doing here for this guy. This is how much they even care if you live or die. What an awful thing." It just sets it up really well, I thought.
And then just some of the other characters in the audience are amazing. Obviously, we see the blind guy, and his friend is narrating the fight for him. And then you cut to the big baby Huey kind of guy with the suspenders and the straw hat.
Yeah.
Big, enormous guy.
He's got it all. And he eats basically everything that's not nailed down. I love the fact that he flags down the hot dog man for a dog, and the hot dog man hands it to the guy at the end of the aisle and says, "Here, pass this down." So you got about 4 or 5 guys touching this hot dog before you even have a chance to eat it.
Hey, that's what you got to do at the game, at the fights or the ball game.
So Stoker goes into the dressing room. He's getting ready for the fight. He's got to get taped up and, got to get his trunks on, etc. And it's really interesting, once again, faces, John.
Yeah.
These people, the boxers and the guys who do the taping up and work on cuts and stuff when they're after the fight, these guys look so real to me.
Yeah. Wallace Ford is the trainer, Gus.
He looks so authentic, it's off the scale. He kind of reminds me of if you had like 3 brothers, William Demarest, William Frawley, and Wallace Ford. They just they all have that sort of body type and the same sort of, New Yorker kind of sensibility. And I love this guy, and he has some of the best lines in the movie.
So we come into this dressing room, and here's this cast of characters, boxers of all different stripes, ages, where they are in their career. The young, brand new boxer, it's his first fight. What I love about that is he turns around, and on the back of his robe, it's like a high school boxing.
Yeah, good point, John.
You got the young black boxer who's the up-and-coming guy. He's the main event, Luther Hawkins, played by James Edwards, who's one of the very early African-American actors to cross over into mainstream Hollywood.
He was pre-Sidney Poitier, right?
Yeah. And I've seen it. You've seen his face a lot. He's in a lot of TV stuff going on in the years, but this is one of his early roles. So one thing happens, Stoker's in the dressing room. The dressing room is kind of below ground, and every once in a while, there's this window he walks over to, and it's street level. And he looks out, and from through that window, you can see the hotel window.
And the lights are still on, so she hasn't budged.
And he just keeps looking. He keeps looking to see if she's going to come to this fight. It's really sad.
And that's what's great about Robert Ryan. He's got the face that's so hard that he looks like he could just kill you with a look. And then at the same time, he can break your heart. The way he's looking up at this window, "Please come. I need you here. Please come."
Yeah.
And finally the light goes out. His whole attitude changes.
Yeah.
He's psyched. He's ready to win. He's going to take this fighter. And then you got the manager come in, Tiny, and you got Red, his trainer, cut man, and it's really sickening how ghoulish this whole thing is that Tiny is doing to him. And Red says, "Stay away from him. Stay away from him. He'll get you. He'll cut you up." And Tiny goes, "Don't worry about it. You're gonna do just fine. Just fine. I'll get you a star bout. You get 25%. And I'm thinking, my God, what a scumbag.
Yeah.
Because you bet against him, and that this guy is probably going to get the shit beat out of him, and he's going to lose. So you're gonna build him up this way? It was just really awful and really ghoulish. They reminded me of Requiem for a Heavyweight.
Yeah. So Julie's back in her room, and she can't decide. She's got this ticket in her hand, and she finally leaves the room, as you said, and Stoker sees the light go off. She's just going to go wander the streets now. And there's just this wonderful sequence with her walking through this town. She goes past the arena because she doesn't walk in, and then she goes to Dreamland, and it's this amazing arcade. And it's got all these different features in it. It's got a hamburger stand. It's got the thing where it blows the skirts up.
Kind of like Marilyn Monroe in 7-Year Itch.
I want to call out 2 people here. The art directors were Albert D'Agostino and Jack Oakey. So those are the guys responsible for this set. And again, we're passing there's a liquor store. There's a biker gang. a 40s biker gang.
Yeah.
Which, seriously, leather jackets, rough-looking chicks, motorcycles. I mean, they look really good.
It was like a Hell's Angels type thing before Hell's Angels.
So part of the arcade, there's a tattoo parlor. And there's just a lovely scene where she's at the doorway and she's looking at all these people, young people just having a great time.
Right, and she's hearkening back to when she was young and before she got married, or around the time she got married, and just how much fun it is just to be out on a Saturday night and enjoy yourself.
It was so cool, this set. I thought to myself, damn, I wish I lived in that town.
Yeah, it reminded me sort of Playland.
Right.
In Times Square.
In Times Square.
I mean, certainly Playland had a more seedy element to it, but it did remind me of that. Back in the day when it existed.
And I just felt like, wow, back in the 40s, before TV, people, if they wanted to have fun, they had to go out. And this is like an example of what that was like. You went to the movies, you did all these things outside with other people.
Well, she sees, basically, I guess, an early version of Rock'em Sock'em Robots. where there's a girl, she's, obviously on a date with this guy, and they're pretending to be boxing and stuff, and then the one boxer gets knocked down, and she gets snapped back to reality immediately because this is what she's trying to avoid, and she can't seem to avoid it no matter what.
And then she ends up walking on, and I love the scene, though. She's on the street, and this kind of guy in a big zoot suit comes up to her and tries to pick her up.
He's a real gentleman with her welfare at heart, isn't he?
Such a slick guy. I love him.
Oh, my God. Jesus. You like dancing? You seem like you like dancing. She's walking and not talking to him, but he's still talking to her. You want a cigarette?
That's some pickup line.
What a creep. I have one piece of trivia, John, just before we go into this.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to throw it at you, see how you do. As she's walking through the town, there's a cigar shop. Who owns the cigar stand?
Louis Dombrowski.
Louis Dombrowski, played by
Bernard Gorcey.
And who is?
Father of
Leo Gorcey. He played Louis Dombrowski, as you just said. He owned Louis' Sweet Shop in all the Bowery Boys movies.
And here he has a little hot dog stand.
A Sunday morning staple for both you and I, John. Long before we knew each other.
He hasn't moved up in the world. He still owns a sweet shop, hot dog stand, whatever.
No, it's a cigar stand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now it's a cigar stand.
That just killed me. As soon as I saw that, John, I instantly thought of you because I thought, oh my God, there he is, Satchela.
All right, so we go back into the arena, and here we see kind of this more of the setup, and basically there's this gangster, Little Boy, Tiny and Red keep referring to, and you get the sense you don't want to cross this guy.
No, he's very sharply dressed, and he's got that kind of face, but you don't want to mess with him.
Right. And he's sitting in the ring watching the fights with his girlfriend.
He's the best dressed. He's the best dressed guy in the entire joint.
We have the fight with Tiger Nelson and Stoker Thompson.
And what I love is, John, when they come in, there's an announcer calling out, just before the fight starts, and he goes, "And remember, Friday night is wrestling night at the Paradise. And for the first time, they will be wrestling in a ring filled with fish." What? A ring? He says it 3 times. A ring filled with fish. Filled with fish.
I couldn't figure that out.
Wrestling and fish. Can you imagine what that place must smell like on Saturday night?
I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. Are the fish flopping around on the mat? Where are they?
Who came up with this concept? Oh, wait, I got it. We'll have them wrestling in a pile of fish.
Is that kind of like wrestling with greased pigs? I don't understand the concept.
It's very much of the same ilk.
Crazy.
And I love where you have voices coming out of the audience, basically putting down Stoker and how old he is. Hey, Pop, where's your wheelchair? That's really great. That builds up the confidence.
My favorite one is, don't bend, Pop, you'll never get up.
And then the poor guy, Stoker Thompson, he's looking he's looking over at the seat where of the ticket he purchased for his wife, who's going to be his only person there rooting for him, and she's not there.
Yeah.
He's not there. He's on his own. He's all alone.
And so, cut to Ouija, the timekeeper, and he rings the bell.
Yeah. So the fight starts out, and look, this is not a pretty fight. It's not like, you see in Rocky or even you see in Raging Bull or, the Thrill in Manila. You got two guys, really muscular guys, coming up against each other. This guy's doing the best he can. The guy Tiger is a young guy, and he's got a good punch to him because he's a young kid. But Stoker, he doesn't really have a lot of style. But the build, I got to say, man, the build on Robert Ryan is unbelievable. It's all muscle, sinew. And they're doing this bout, and I love the timid wife. The timid wife,
Harriet.
Harriet. She's not getting enough action for her money. She was so timid she was afraid to watch the fight. Quit stalling. Let's have some action. And the husband looks at her like, what the hell?
But like Stoker he's what you call a plotter. He just he's in there, he's punching away, he's missing, but he just keeps going at the young guy. The other thing they cut to is the blind man, and the guy's narrating to him, and he goes, Nelson opens his left eye, it's bleeding. And the blind man's like, good.
Yeah, what a sweet guy this guy is. Isn't he great?
This is what you call a bloodthirsty crowd.
And then you cut to the side of the ring for Stoker, and you got Red and Tiny, and they're basically licking their lips, waiting for this guy to tank. They just want to wait for him to tank.
But they know it's in the third round. I think it's funny, in the movie they call them heats. It's like in the third heat, he has to go down, the third heat. But it's funny, even in the earlier rounds, Tiger, when he gets in close with Stoker, he's kind of giving him hints, and Stoker doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
Has no idea. It's okay, I'll take it easy on you. But then at a certain point, he says to him during the fight, when it gets a little more intense, he starts hitting him really hard, and Tiger goes, well, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
And Stoker goes, what's wrong? You don't like it? And then you got little boy's doll, Bunny. She's a sweetheart, isn't she?
Yeah. I like how she takes up bets with the guy in front of her. She knows this fight's fixed. She's grabbing bets from people in the ring around her.
He gets punched at a certain point so hard, he just is down for the count. And you think, this guy's not going to get up. He's there on the canvas, on his back. He's bleary-eyed. And you think, that's it. It's over. And he pulls himself up on his knees, and he looks up, and he gets this blurry shot of... there's an ad where it says, over 35... try, and I guess some sort of vitamins or
Vita something.
Today could be Vita something, right? Because you can't see it because the heads are covering it. But this is what the guy's thinking. Oh my God, I'm 35 years old. What the hell am I doing? I can't even make it through this fight.
Yeah, that's a great shot. And when he falls to the ground, as you said, Tiny, his manager, is like, oh, this is it. I'm out of here. He starts to walk out the ring.
He does. He says, I'll see you later to Red. Nice.
And he's like he goes back to the gate. And then Stoker, of course, finally gets up. And Tiny's like, what the hell?
But just before he gets up, what I love about this is, once again, the timid wife who didn't want to see the fight, she screams because the guy's down. She screams to her husband, make him get up! Make him get up! And once again, the husband's looking at her like, are you out of your mind?
So Stoker finally gets up off the mat, and Tiny has to come back to the fight. He's like, Jesus Christ, it's not over. And now the gangster, little boy, they're like, what's going on here? He's trying to pull a fast one. He didn't go down. This was the third round.
This is the time to go. And he knows he's been had.
Yes. Finally, in the corner, Tiny and Red spill the beans because it's going to be the fourth round. They're like, look, you got to take a dive here.
Red tells him, Tiny, you got to tell him.
You got to take a dive because we have this bet with little boy. And no one...
I can take him. I can take him, but no one double crosses little boy. No. There's one interesting thing. When at one point you have Stoker Thompson lying on the ground. He's on his back. And I guess that they didn't have the coverage. I guess they didn't have this close-up that Wise wanted. So they do an optical printing.
Yes.
And you see it a few times throughout it. And once again, this is Wise. Even though he was a brilliant director, he's still a journeyman. He's still learning his craft, and you can't remember it. You can't know every single shot. And this one in particular works really well because of the close-up of it. And by doing an optical printing to make that from the intranegative, you have to use this optical printer that actually photographs the frames one by one, and to make this close-up shot so you can use it in the film. And what's interesting is it really heightens the grain, and it gives a sort of like confused, dreamlike quality because this guy's lying on the ground. So it works really well.
We get to the fourth round. Stoker, he actually starts to win the fight because he's plodding along and he's punching at this guy, and slowly the crowd starts to turn. And now they start rooting for Stoker. And it's a well-edited scene because how they build this up as Stoker starts to get the better of him. He starts to get the better of him. The blind guy starts to root for him. Harriet is suddenly on his side. Cut him to pieces.
Then you hear Tiny go, "You better lay down. You better lay down, Stoke." And then over the top of that, you hear his wife say, "Better than having your brains beat out, better than having you dead." And then he hears Tiny, "Lay down, lay down, lay down." Now he's got to make a decision. And he decides, I'm getting up.
I'm going to finish this fight. Because he's not the kind of guy that's going to lay down. So finally, Stoker knocks out Tiger. And what's funny is Tiny and Red immediately beat it for the door.
Ransom is sinking ship.
We're in trouble now. So even though Stoker knocks this guy out, he's 35. He barely has any energy. And he literally crawls out of the ring. He's just he's dragging his feet. He's struggling to get through the ropes.
It's a really nice shot. It's a really nice shot because you got them trying to revive Tiger Nelson on the one corner, and it almost seemed like he was going to go over to him and say good fight or something, but he just walks to the ropes and makes his way through. He's got nothing.
What's funny is when he walks into the dressing room, Gus is there reading a newspaper, and he looks up and he sees Stoker, and he's like, "Holy Toledo!"
Holy Toledo! I love that.
He looks like The Walking Dead, basically.
Absolutely.
I don't think Gus was in on it.
And what I love is Gus, just before he comes in, he was reading Thrilling Love magazine.
The romantic. And Stoker gets in there and he's looking around. He's like, wait, where's Tiny and Red? Because he notices they've suddenly vacated.
Yeah. He knows he's been had.
Right. Of course, in comes Little Boy and Danny. And... Right. Little boys, I paid for something tonight,
What does Danny say to Gus and the other trainer? I love this phrase. It's a 40s phrase, blow. That's all he had to say. And Gus goes, can you turn out the lights afterwards, Stoker? Yeah, great. That's the first thing he's going to be thinking about.
Turn out the lights. I'm not coming back. So they're obviously pissed at him, and
we'll talk later.
We'll talk later. In no uncertain terms.
It's Pontius Pilate. His fate has been sealed. That's the end of it. Now he's got to get out of there somehow. Yeah.
So then we have Stoker, and he looks out the window, and those guys are out there in the corner. So he's got to get out of the arena.
Right. Which
is another beautiful sequence. Because it's now an empty arena.
And there's something kind of spooky about the empty arena. It's completely bare. There's some garbage and stuff, but it's completely bare. And I get the chills just thinking about it now, and I did when I saw it, because he's got to get out of there somewhere, and there's no help. There's really nowhere else to run. And he goes, it's a beautiful wide shot, and he goes running down one of the aisles, and he makes his way around the ring, and there's a chair in his way. He's like, get the fuck out of my way! And he just throws the chair out of the way as if it's somebody in his way, because he's desperate. And that I love the fact that he throws the chair out of the way, because that adds to the desperation of what this guy's in now.
And it seems like all the exits are locked. He's kind of trapped in there.
It's after the show. He was the last fight.
And he finally makes it out a door that leads to this back alley. So as he gets to the end of the alley, he gets distracted suddenly.
Well, he sees salvation. You got the cozy hotel. It is the cozy hotel, right? Yeah.
Hotel Cozy, my friend.
Is it the Hotel Cozy? Okay.
It's the Hotel Cozy, but I don't think it's a cozy hotel.
No. So he sees the Hotel Cozy, and that's salvation. He's thinking, salvation. The light is on. She's home. I just got to get across the street. And we'll get out of here, and everything will be okay. But
the guys see him. We hear a voice. Hey, here he is over here.
The way they close in, almost like a gate.
Yeah.
They close in on the alley. Reminds me of the Bugs Bunny cartoon. when you got that really big bulldog, street tough dog and his gang, and they're going to beat the hell out of Bugs Bunny in the alleyway.
So I know
it's not a funny scene, but it instantly reminded me of the Bugs Bunny cartoon.
Those guys actually reminded me of some of the characters in Raging Bull, the gangsters. They just had those 40s faces, and there's 4 of them, as you said, closing in on Stoker, and they're
like
backing
a gate.
into
They just
block
they block the exit. Yeah.
So they actually end up beating him, and he's fighting back, and they get him on the ground.
You never punch the local gangster in the face and draw blood, John.
Well, that's the thing. They are getting him down on the ground, and he's like, hold him down. And you're thinking, what the fuck is going to come next? And he gets So he's like, hold his hand.
Yeah. And you're never going to use that hand on anybody again. And then they cut away, and you go, oh, boy. But there's a beautiful cutaway, though, John. They do a cutaway of what's going to happen, and Robert Wise pans the camera over, and you see up on the brick wall this lighting projected, and you get the silhouette of the band playing in the Dreamland dance hall, and that's what you get. And the drummer's doing this fill, and it's really, you get a sense of what's happening to this poor guy in the alleyway. But it's beautifully done. Well, I mean, what an artist Robert Wise was.
Yeah, and that was a good point. I didn't think about it that way. Like the kind of the drumming. The staccato drumming is like what they're doing to his hand.
Exactly right.
So then we cut back to the hotel room, and again we see a clock. It's now 10:10 p.m., and she's there warming the soup up on the stove.
Yeah, and it's heartbreaking because she just wants to feed her man, and he's going to be tired. She has no idea what happened.
And she kind of feels guilty, right? She didn't go to the fight.
Yes.
And that's why she's getting this nice dinner for him for when he returns.
Right.
So Stoker's now trying to get up and climbing out of the alley. There's a really cute couple up on the fire escape, which is interesting. It's a nice contrast because it's a young couple. They're just starting out, and they see this guy stumbling. They think he's a drunk.
He's got a real snootful.
A snootful.
Yeah, you don't hear that expression much anymore. He's got a real snootful.
So he finally stumbles to the end of the alley, and there's the hotel room, and he starts calling for Julie. Adrian! Nothing's new, Bob.
Yes.
It's all been done before.
I know.
And he collapses in the street, and the crowd gathers, and Julie hears it from the hotel room, and she comes running down.
She sees him in the ground. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And there he is, his head in her lap, the crowd's gathering, and he's like, they busted it, Julie. They busted it for good.
But it's kind of a happy ending because Julie's relaxed now. And she goes, all right, broken hand, whatever.
Yes.
We'll get you fixed up as best we can, but you ain't doing this anymore. So it's an interesting, tragic ending, but it's actually a happy ending because this guy's not going to get his brains beat out anymore, and he's still alive. Yeah. And that's a plus. Certainly is for Julie.
They're under the Dreamland arcade sign.
And you know what's interesting, John? In that shot, when he comes out of the alley, I don't know if it's purposeful or not, but when he comes out of the alley, his hand's all crunched. He's got it under his suit jacket. He's holding it and he's stumbling. If you see in the right-hand corner, the Dreamland, the way it's framed, the Dreamland sign says, I dream. I thought that was neat. That was neat. And I would say it's intentional on Robert Wise's part.
Of course.
I thought that was neat.
And what is it? I mean, that's them. Her plans for the future. What is their future? Right. It's like this dream of theirs to open a newsstand, or what did they want to do with it?
Oh, he's either going to get a beer joint, he was going to get a piece of some young fighter, or he was going to get a cigar stand. And we pull back and we see the time is 10:16. So we're talking about a 71-minute real-time film.
Yeah.
A really tight, beautifully executed, beautifully directed, and really well acted by all parties.
It's a great example of, like, I know RKO Studios was known for this kind of like middle budget or small budget Hollywood film. So it's all on a sets, it's contained, but it's because of the art direction, because of the characters, the casting, the wardrobe, it just feels so real and colorful. But it's done on tight budgets.
They had minimal budgets. And they left the directors alone because they didn't cost too much money. They came in on budget. And they're short films, generally shorter than your normal 2-hour film. And they had the limitations.
Yeah. The Set-Up 1949, this kind of set the standard. There were boxing movies before, certainly. But I kind of felt this set the standard for boxing movies to come.
I agree 100%. The thing about Robert Wise for me is this. I look at Robert Wise as a filmmaker as kind of the sorcerer's apprentice. And Wells was the sorcerer. He learned so much from Wells just by working with him and watching how that film was put together, Kane. He learned from the ground up, and he is a brilliant filmmaker with a brilliant career.
Yeah, a long, varied career. Count Spielberg and Scorsese as big fans of his.
You bet, and for good reason.
Yeah. That's all the time we have this week.
We'd like to thank our friend Glenn Arnowitz for his music.
And of course our listeners for tuning in.
So join us next week for another episode of
Film Detour.
If you like our show, please recommend us to your friends. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, and leave a review.
You can also visit us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And you can also find us on YouTube.